Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 19th of August 2013. So today's show is going to be covering a Tom Chilton interview. This is on basically everything in patch 5.4. We have Timeless Isles, the Cape, Catch-Up, Raiding, Proving Grounds, the whole thing. So first of all, let's get into the Timeless Isle. So basically, the thing is, why did they do this in favour of dailies? Well, what he said is, we wanted it to be a little bit more open-ended and do freeform open gameplay in a way that would feel inherently accommodating to non-repetitive gameplay. Which I think actually is very important because if you remember back in the days of, 5.2, when the Thunder Island thingy came out, everybody was sort of all into it for about 4 days and then everyone stopped. Which was kind of weird. I think it's just showing that daily quests are perhaps a thing of the past. Now anyway, back to what he said. It's going to be a push for us in the future, as well as to continue to develop, okay, bad English, but whatever, on some of these ideas. In a lot of ways, the Timeless Isle is a place where we can test out ideas for the future. This is very interesting because it means, first of all the future zones are going to be following, well, hopefully following the Timeless Isle model, or at least taking lessons from it. Now, there's a little thing I'll get into later, but I would be quite excited to see some of the tech used in the Isle in questing. So anyway, back to what he said. They think the players will go back to it for a number of reasons. There's inherent world PvP with the Censer of Agony, access to the legendary Cloak area once you get that, and also for gearing alts, because after all the gear is bind on account, that's the 496s. They like how the new tech allows them to do more dynamic things outside of the normal quest system, and this brings me on to what I was talking about earlier. Does this perhaps mean that there'll be more dynamic events and stuff like that in the next expansion? For the questing experience in the zones. Now, if you remember, say, Guild Wars 2, they were all talking about their dynamic thing, and really, what they had was not dynamic. That said, what Warcraft has in Timeless Isles is not dynamic. It's just kind of random stuff in the world that's scripted, and it's there if you want to do it. Now, I think this would be really, really good for leveling, and it would also help break up the leveling experience. Like, if you're in the middle of a grind of a bunch of quests, and you just see something cool pop up in your map, and you can do that for 5 minutes, and it'll break the monotony a bit, I think that'll really help invigorate the questing experience. I think Mists of Pandaria was especially grindy, and it didn't really have enough sort of breaks from the tedium of doing quests. Okay, they had lots of sort of quests that were trying to be set pieces, but they just had no real effect, I think. And also, what I think about the Mists of Pandaria questing really seems to be mirrored in a lot of people I've talked to. So perhaps there are major kind of reforms needed to the questing experience, and hopefully this new dynamic-ish tech will facilitate that. Now, next up we have the legendary capes. So they said that they want these to feel legendary, and the reason the way they've done this is by giving you the massive item level, the spell effect, the proc, and of course it gives you access to a new area. So it's got more gameplay implications other than just, oh, you have some more stats, which is nice. And I think it does work. Of course, a weapon is going to be a little bit cooler for most people because it's something you carry in your hand and often you whack stuff with it. And it's hard to make a cloak sort of compete with that. Also, a lot of players choose not to show their cloak, which makes sense because even with a lot of transmog sets, it just doesn't really go. So, yeah, that's the thing. Now, the decision was made that it should be available pretty close to the start of 5.4, and this was actually deliberate so that people could enjoy the cloak for the tier, because a bit of a problem with the past tiers is it would be nearly the end of the tier that you would get your item from the legendary quest, and that meant that you didn't really get to enjoy it for that tier. And with this being the final raid tier, it does make sense you can fully use and enjoy the benefits of your legendary cape, or cloak. So anyway, I think that's very good. Now the next thing that Tom Chilton talked about was catch-up, and how we're going to get our characters basically from questing to raid ready. They said that they've increased the drop rate for loot in Throne of Thunder and the 5.0 LFRs, and they've also decreased the cost of a lot of gear Valor Point wise. Now, an interesting thing is that Valor Points actually are not very important in the next patch. They're used for item upgrades, okay, but other than item upgrades, I don't really think they're used for much at all. So they will definitely be good for, say, buying the reduced cost 522 epics. Now, the Isle has varying difficulties and stuff like that, so it's got easy mobs that are just normals and then hard elites, and it should accommodate roughly everyone. Also, the drop rate for the weapon tokens and armor tokens is pretty high, so it's going to be pretty easy to get the stuff, actually. Now, also do remember that the 496 tokens are bind on account, so you can always head back there on one of your other characters to gear up an alt, which is very nice. Now for rating, and I'm actually just going to start this off with a quote from him. Here we go. Normal and heroic are tuned at this point so that they require a fair amount of dedication and willingness to stomach a lot of failure. Oh yes. So we wanted to make sure there's something out there for more casual guilds who want to do raids, but they just don't want to jump into LFR with a full group or even as a group of 10 or whatever. So that's what Tom said, and this is pretty good because LFR was originally, actually they even admitted here, LFR was originally supposed to cater to these kind of guilds who didn't really have the time for full-on raiding, but the thing was it was so easy, tacticless, zergless, and really devoid of any social interaction that's interesting, that it just doesn't accommodate these people. So yeah, that's why Flex is here. They've added this difficulty to, I think, just accommodate to a lot of people. The problem with LFR is that, for all the reasons I said earlier, it doesn't appeal to that many people, and even though people do it, a lot of people certainly do it, I don't think they have a great time. They have to deal with endless wipes due to stupidity, they have to deal with trolls, all that stuff, which is no fun. Why not have a sort of challenging experience if you're at the appropriate sort of skill level? That's interesting. Like, Flex is not going to be massively hard, it's not going to be humongously punishing, but it will require a little bit of dedication, a little bit of reading your tactics and communicating, but more importantly it gives that good social experience. And like Tom Chilton even said that he thinks that normal, heroic, and flex are the full Warcraft experience. He pretty much said LFR is the watered down bullshit, which it is. Now they've actually added a lot of rewards for to the Siege of Orgrimmar for flex to heroic, to reward players for just having the extra difficulty, stuff like that. So these rewards include mounts, some new achievements, transmog gear, and heirlooms, and it's really the most diverse set of non-main gear rewards that they've done in a raid tier, which is very good. It's also more about giving to the players who are willing to put in the extra effort rather than taking away from LFR. So if you enjoy LFR somehow, you can still do that, but really you're just best to either get a guild that does flexes or wait until you can pug flexes with a decent group. I think anyway. Now finally, the thing he talked about was Proving Grounds, and he said that it's for people who are struggling to break into the endgame. The current system of getting into LFDs and then being yelled at isn't fun for everyone, fun for anyone, so the Proving Grounds is so people can just jump into that and it eases them into the endgame. And another point of LFD is that it kind of ruins everyone else's experience. Like, if you go in there and you have a crap tank, a crap DPS, you don't have a fun dungeon run. It's slow, it's boring, it's more frustrating than anything else, so really, if people, hell, I would even be up for, on a new account or something, they need to do the Proving Grounds in order to be able to queue for LFD, just to make sure that there's at least a baseline of competence for getting in. And it's not that high a baseline either, because bronze is very easy in the Proving Grounds. But anyway, that's really it for today's show. Now, right before I finished recording this, I saw this tweet, right? And the tweet said that they're planning on doing a Wintergrass, Patrol Brad style thing for 6.0. I don't have any information on it yet, but I just thought I'd throw this in as a tidbit for the next Warcraft Daily, and that really brings us to the end of the show. There's nothing else to talk about. There should be a new PTR build coming out quite soon, so I'll be able to cover all the changes with that. But yeah, that's it for now. Please like and subscribe if you like the show, and I'll see you next time.